WebEx. Let me recognize Senator Fischer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Honey, this committee has made a number of changes, including creating the R&E division in order to improve DoD's ability to deliver innovative solutions to the warfighter. But one thing that Congress cannot legislate is culture of the workforce, which witnesses have testified to us is generally risk averse. Can you talk about the importance of culture and risk tolerance in particular when it comes to innovation?
Yes, Senator. A culture of risk tolerance really begins with leadership. And it's very important as senior leaders that we communicate continuously to the workforce risks that are acceptable, risks that may be going too far, and how we can work together to ensure that we're taking risk appropriately. During my 2 tours at DARPA, which I've spent a total of 14 years, it's an agency which has really mastered the art of how do you take risks, how do you take risks intelligently, and lead the world in delivering capabilities for the warfighter. So if confirmed in R&E, that was one of the things that I would undertake to work with the workforce to understand what is the current risk tolerance culture and what can be done to ensure that we have an environment where the workforce there feels comfortable in taking risks and is supported by leadership.
What role do you think that R&E can play to help encourage this? Do you have any specific examples in mind how you would approach that?
So one of the things that I think is very important in the early process of creating a risk-tolerant culture is helping people think about objectives that they would like to achieve. What are the big things that if they had the resources and the commitment of leadership to follow through with, what could they undertake? And at that point, when leadership buys in, they similarly are also taking part and taking on the risk. One way that has been done, for example, is through the use of grand challenges. That's been very effective at trying to really take the leading edge out there in a risk-tolerant culture. And then there are tools such as other transactions, which have been very helpful at engaging non-traditional parts of the community, which for many people has been a big leap forward in risk-taking.
Thank you. Ms. Hinderstein, while some proliferation challenges such as North Korea and Iran remain constant, the expanding arsenals of both Russia and China, as well as their development of new and novel nuclear systems, they are dramatically changing the threat landscape. How do you see DNN's role adapting to the new environment, and what area of focus do you intend to prioritize if you were?
Thank you, Senator. I agree that the reports, in particular of China's nuclear buildup, are profoundly concerning. I certainly would need, if confirmed, to get a full briefing on what the changes are with regard to China's nuclear arsenal. But in any case, we need to have a meaningful dialogue with China. I support the President's interim national security strategy in which he calls for such a meaningful dialogue. And to me, that dialogue means that it would have to benefit U.S. national security interests first and foremost. Similarly, with Russia, their expansion into new and novel delivery platforms does change the scope of activity potentially for future arms control agreements. So from a DNN perspective, if confirmed, I would want to focus on what the needs would be for verification and monitoring and technical support to any future arms control agreement, making sure that they take into account the changes that have happened since our last negotiation with Russia and support the State Department's process. Thank you.
You know, when we look at Russia's arsenal of especially the non-strategic nuclear weapons, and you're talking about an arms control process, that's going to be really complicated. And you alluded to that in your answer. When we look at those verification challenges for weapons that are far more complicated than the strategic nuclear forces, do you anticipate that we have enough knowledge right now in order to address that? And if we don't, how are we going to be able to have the facts at our fingertips?
Senator, I completely agree with you that if we were to pursue an arms control agreement with Russia that started to touch on non-strategic nuclear weapons, we would need to take that into account into the verification system, and we wouldn't be able to simply apply all of the existing system to that new reality. This is why I think it's extremely important that we work now and invest now, and that's my commitment, if confirmed, to look at those longer-term needs when it comes to verification, monitoring, and detection, to look at non-strategic nuclear weapons, novel delivery platforms, and even looking at warheads as treaty-limited items. These verification techniques do not come off the shelf when you need them unless you invest in their development in advance. And I think that's what I would commit to do if confirmed.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.